Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, I'm Supervisor Paula Mahan, and welcome to Colonie Connect. Today we have a special program that's going to discuss the important facts about CPR and CPR training. And I have two special guests with me today, Assemblyman Bob Reilly.
Hello, Paula.
And also, welcome Bob, and Deputy Chief Peter Berry from our EMS department right here in town of Colonie. Once again, welcome gentlemen, and we have a very important topic to talk about today. Peter, I know that we have many discussions about CPR training and what it means for our community. And we've actually had programs of providing CPR to our employees in the town of Colonie. And we're extending that out to the public as well, as you have done in the past. And there's also an important component that we've been talking about, and that is the educating the public awareness about the importance of CPR training. And I know, Bob, you have talked about supporting the concept of having CPR training in classrooms, for example, possibly in a health class as part of the curriculum, because that training extends out into the families and communities. And so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about the purpose of supporting that bill. I know a few years back I talked to Bob Elling from the Heart Association, and we talked about the importance of this bill and discussed it with the schools and where it is at this point. So I think we're all in agreement that the importance of CPR training is certainly very obvious. But to actually talk about what CPR means to someone, to a family, to someone that is suffering, into cardiac arrest, and how important the training is. And maybe we could begin with, Bob, you could tell us a little bit about the bill that you have put your support behind and why you think it's important to support CPR training for not only our schools but in our community.
Well, Paula, Peter, of course, is the expert on this, but we do have a number of bills that would promote better health, and especially in support of EMS services. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we have to have awareness, we have to have accessibility of the defibrillators, and we have to have the training. Mm-hmm. And I see that as a three-step process. But training our young people is so important, and that's what this bill would do. Okay. And so that more people are aware of this, because the problem is so huge. I mean, maybe 300,000 people die of heart attacks, and many of them, as Peter will attest to, could be saved if, in fact, we had CPR immediately given to them. And I forget the statistics, but I think for every minute that goes by, the chance is about 10% greater that a person, in fact, will die. Mm-hmm. So we have a bill that would, in fact, mandate training, CPR training, in all high schools in the state. And I know people are very cautious, and understandably so, as I am, about mandates. But this can be, as you suggested before, integrated right into the health curriculum. And with the new methods of CPR, the training is very easy. Mm-hmm. So I'm very supportive of this bill. I'm a co-sponsor of it, and we are pushing hard to get it through the Assembly and the Senate.
Well, we certainly appreciate your support. We talk about that often, and it is a collaborative effort of everyone coming together to understand the importance and why we are advocating for this. And you're right. You mentioned that the actual program and training, it is very simple. I think it was last year, Peter, we initiated the program for our employees.
Yes, we did.
Which most of them took advantage of that. I myself did, and I thought it was a great refresher course from what I had learned in the past. And, you know, it really was a great opportunity for our employees to get together and to learn a skill or be refreshed in a skill that's so important to all of us. So it's something that all organizations could do, and we certainly would help in any way we could. But this is really, you know, it's such a great tool to have, and it's really so easily, I should say, easy to implement the training. And once you learn it, and I think, Peter, you have said this, once you learn it, even if you can't recall everything, we have systems in place to help people if they are calling in that situation, trying to help someone. So there's so many different support systems that our EMS has put into place that really make this a very user-friendly process with outstanding results. We do, you know, Peter and myself and along with all the EMS staff, including our police department, our fire services, our volunteer fire departments. This is a collaborative effort to provide the best public safety that we could possibly provide for our residents and anyone that's going through our town, passing through our town. And we're very proud of the fact that our results continue to be excellent and continue to exceed, you know, expectations that any supervisor could ask for. And we set those expectations high. We all work together to achieve them. And once again, we're very proud of those results. So public safety, public health is a priority for us. And Peter, you and the members of your department have done an outstanding job. And when we narrow it down to this one area of cardiac care, you've received many awards for the...
Yes, we have. But I think the point that you just made is critically important, is that this is a collaborative effort. Mm-hmm. And just having you here, Assemblyman Reilly, and showing the folks out there in the town of Colonie that not only is local government working with state government, and is state government trying to do something positive to impact the health and well-being of the communities by sponsoring this bill and getting it passed. As you said, CPR training is critically important. There's over 300,000 of these events that occur in the nation every year, and over a third of those events don't get any kind of CPR, which actually results in you know, a disturbing number of people dying from cardiac arrest, that we can truly have an impact with this bill. And getting this bill passed and increasing the number of people that have an awareness of CPR and have some training in CPR, in hopes that in the event that something occurs nearby, they can act and perform CPR. If we can get bystander CPR initiated in a cardiac arrest event, it dramatically increases the possibility of somebody surviving. And our studies here in Colonie have really shown that. The events that we have had where bystander CPR occurs, we've had dramatic outcomes. In the nation, roughly 8% of the people that suffer cardiac arrest survive. Here in Colonie, that number is upwards to 34% and climbing. And one of the reasons that is that we've embraced the changes of the American Heart Association. We have provided training for our town employees, our town fire service, our police department, and we collaboratively work together with your leadership in making public safety a priority and deploying these techniques in the field along with other technologies that we have to really improve the survival rate in cardiac arrest here in town. And our hopes with this bill and with some changes that the American Heart Association has made in making it easier to learn CPR, that we will just continue to increase those numbers and hopefully improve our survival rates and be an example for everyone.
Well, I think, Peter, what's important about the bill, for all the good work that you do throughout the town, it is still somewhat limited how many people you can reach in your training efforts. And the State Education Department is always very cautious about adding anything to the curriculum. But this is, in fact, so important and so easy to do.
It is.
And we do have that captured audience where, in fact, we can reach just about everybody in the state. And kids can learn this. And I think you've suggested the value. Once we have everybody capable of doing this simple thing until you arrive on the scene, the benefit is just tremendous.
And I think, and I know Paula's background is in education, I think getting it into the schools where kids are in an environment that promotes learning, their brains are like sponges and they're picking this stuff up quickly and easily. I think it's really the right place to be to introduce this and to get everyone that's coming out of high school to know CPR. Just imagine the impact 2, 3, 4 years from now, once we get this bill passed, of the numbers of people in New York State that would know CPR and the changes that we could make on the survival rates of victims of sudden cardiac arrest.
Peter, let me ask you, what is your response time right now to a cardiac arrest problem?
In the town of Colonie, cardiac arrests are given the highest level of response. We actually call it an echo response. A little over a year ago, we implemented a town-wide echo response, and our response time to cardiac arrests is less than 5 minutes. It's a partnership between law enforcement, our 12 volunteer fire departments, and the EMS department working together simultaneously in this what we call team approach to an echo response.
So we're really talking about a 5-minute period where if a citizen can perform CPR in that time, chances are we're going to have a person survive.
And we have a very highly trained communications division that answers our 911 calls here in Colonie. And when someone calls in with an event such as this, we have highly trained communicators that help talk the person through doing chest compressions. And even if somebody's had some exposure, watching a videotape, going to a class, even if they don't necessarily remember because of what's going on, our highly trained communicators can help walk them through the steps of CPR until we get there.
So there are just so many positive results that could come from this if we could get this into the schools. And in the curriculum, in the science curriculum, the students do learn all about the heart and how it functions, and what could happen if there's a lack of oxygen that can be supplied. They learn all about the circulatory system. It's part of what they already learn. And again, this brings it to another level of what happens when it doesn't function correctly. And Peter, maybe just to give a little bit of an example of what happens when somebody goes into cardiac arrest. I mean, what would we be seeing?
Basically, it's triggered by an event. That event is usually some form of a blockage in a vessel in the heart that creates ischemia, which is a low oxygen level in that particular area of the heart, which then can create an electrical disturbance in the heart's normal electrical pathways. This can lead to a lethal heart arrhythmia called ventricular fibrillation, which is a chaotic movement of the heart muscle, which then doesn't produce any blood supply. The longer that this condition exists, the person would lose consciousness, they would stop breathing, eventually blood wouldn't be circulating, and they would pass away if intervention doesn't take place, such as the beginning of CPR. Not all sudden cardiac arrests are caused by a heart attack, a blocked vessel. They can be caused by an electrical event that triggers it, but not all heart attacks end in sudden cardiac arrest. Some do and some don't. But basically the person stops breathing, the blood stops circulating, and then that starts the time clock, and the longer that condition exists, brain damage occurs and eventually death.
Okay.
And what is it exactly, Peter, that the CPR does to restore the person?
Well, one of the interesting things you point out, Paula, is with students learning the circulatory system in science and biology and so forth, is that there's an awful lot of science that goes behind the research in developing CPR and developing the teaching methods of CPR. And how CPR works is that through the compression of the sternum, your breastbone, and the recoil of that produces a change in thoracic pressure, your thoracic cavity, which contains your heart. And that change in pressure helps move blood through the left ventricle to the entire body. And one of the things that's important about CPR training today is that it's hands only. There's no more ventilations for layperson CPR training. And the science has really led them to believe that compressions is enough to get blood circulating and to circulate the oxygen supply that's in the blood until professional rescuers arrive. And their hopes behind that is that more people will take advantage of the training and more people will act, because there won't be that hesitancy to do mouth-to-mouth or do ventilations. And through that changing in thoracic pressure that's created by the compression and the recoil of the sternum, they can move blood around, they can buy that person time until we can get there.
Yeah, and that's the key, buying that time until you can get there, because we know from the training that you've had, and there's a lot that goes into this. Peter and his staff are continually looking at, from what point A to point B, what's the response time? Are we in the right areas of town? As the demographics change in the town, we need to be able to get to everybody in a timely manner so that they can be cared for. So all these things are constantly being looked at, and always trying to do better, and educating more people, making more people aware of what they can do, is part of this. And a lot of the fears that people had, number one, by the mouth to mouth was always a fear of whether it would be something contagious or doing something wrong. Again, with the compressions, am I going to hurt the person? If it's someone that's smaller, am I going to break a bone? Am I going to do something to injure them? So through this training, a lot of these fears can be relieved. And it's human nature. You think about things, and you think about when you have a choice. Maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. But when someone is right there, and they need your care, something in you triggers a response that I have to do this, and I have to do it right now because that person's life is depending on me. And the more that people have the proper training, the better they can help someone. And so there's a lot going on all the time. And, in what you describe, you get these calls, every day, and you have to respond, and we try to keep up on any improvements, any type of equipment that might help us, right down to being able to transport people and how to get, move them in and out. Is a lot of people, everyone's a different size. There's so many different variables that go into the care of the patients, for patients in cardiac arrest and all types of care. So it's really, it's quite emergency medical service. That field is so complex, and we are blessed in the town of Colonie to have such a dedicated, experienced, knowledgeable team that are out there doing the job because they want to help people.
Bob, we've had some great examples of this that is recently highlighted at town board meetings, where the community has really come together, where there's been bystander CPR, there's been deployment of an AED in one of our schools, law enforcement and fire service response, an EMS response, and the gentleman walking out of the hospital with no damage whatsoever. And I think those are great examples to share with folks in understanding how important this, and that it works. When I first got involved in EMS more than 25 years ago, we used to think it was luck that we were able to save a victim in cardiac arrest. We happened to be in the right place at the right time. We happened to get there really, really fast, and it was kind of a roll of the dice whether it happened or not. I think one of the things that we're seeing today is with the deployment of good bystander CPR, rapid response system in place to deal with victims in sudden cardiac arrest, you truly can save lives. We can have an impact, and it's not just luck anymore. It's real science that's being deployed, and when it's used correctly, we can save lives.
Yeah, well, look at that number. The average is 8%, and our survival rate in the town is 34%.
Yep.
Those are amazing numbers. I mean, that's an amazing improvement. I know we do have an important instructional video that we'd like to get to, but maybe, Peter, you could explain for Bob and I and our viewers, what is an AED?
I think it's so that everybody can understand what it is. As part of the chain of survival that we're trying to develop here in the town of Colonie, is that it's not only the importance of bystander CPR and getting there and starting CPR, but it's also the rapid deployment of an AED. An AED is an automated external defibrillator that can be applied by a trained, and even in some cases a non-trained individual who can get instructions over the phone from a trained dispatcher. And what that AED can do is it can actually provide the therapy or the treatment necessary to stop that lethal arrhythmia, ventricular fibrillation, and in hopes that a reorganization in the heart's own electrical system will start beating again. So it's a combination of two things that we're trying to make happen here in Colonie. Not only with your support have we been able to put AEDs in all of our town facilities. Through the passage of legislation, we've got AEDs in our school districts, we've got AEDs in our health clubs, in other areas of mass gathering. So if we can combine these two things, awareness of cardiac events, increased training in CPR, early access to an AED, and contacting the emergency system, we can really strengthen the chain of survival here in our community and hopefully increase those numbers even more. And along with that, our medical director, Dr. Michael Daly, who works at Albany Medical Center, he has worked very closely with us. We deploy technologies in the field, such as the ability to send 12 lead EKGs to our hospitals and intervention facilities. The use of, once we have resuscitated somebody successfully, we actually start introducing pre-hospital hypothermia to help prevent brain damage and then transport them to an intervention facility for further care. And our close cooperation in working together with our medical director and our training staff, we've really been able to produce some amazing results. I think the next step is really improving the numbers of people that know CPR. This bill is going to help tremendously. Some of the new training tools that are now available, and we're going to watch a short clip here, I think are just going to help and just improve those numbers.
That's great. You had a question, Bob?
Well, I was just going to make a comment that, we are, thanks to people such as Peter and yourself, the safest town in America. And that award, I believe, was for our police force. But we're also safe because of our EMS. Mm-hmm. But often our constituents don't realize the infrastructure and the expertise that resides out there. Mm-hmm. And I'm often amazed as I go around and I meet people such as Peter, the expertise they have and the support systems behind them. It's just amazing. And, let's say it as elected officials, folks, this is where your tax dollars go, and that's the truth. And we're not always aware, but when you start thinking about you have a heart attack, you can have someone in your house in 5 minutes. And I had the opportunity, I was up at a firehouse in Clifton Park, and an alarm came. And within that 5-minute time, although the ride on the highway is interesting, and I think we might even talk about motorists and what they should do. Because the driver, I was sitting in the front seat with him, was very cool and collected and talking to me what we were going to do. But up ahead, there was all sorts of problems. But we were in the house of a elderly woman within the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And in fact, there were 7 people there. And she was then taken off, and she was going to be fine, I believe, because of that. So
we never know when we're going to need the help, and you can be assured in the town of Colonie, you know, you're in good hands.
What I was going to ask Peter about, though, Paula, was, you know, I would think that one of the hesitancies and one of the problems, and I had an experience in, you probably know Bill Gardner. He's
Yes.
an EMS person. He does training in EMS. We were in the same church about 3 weeks ago, and a woman had an attack. I think it was a minor stroke of some type, and Bill immediately ran 3 pews up and did something. But in these situations, is there a hesitancy with people, as Paula was suggesting, I think, to apply CPR, even if they're training? Because I've never had the experience of seeing someone, although I saw it in church. Actually, Bill was there before I even saw that the person had fallen. But could you just comment on that? What should be the reactions of people? Someone collapses, you have CPR training. What is the usual reaction of people even when they are trained?
I think if people have the confidence and they've gone through the training, I think the reaction is just instantaneous and it's instinctive, like the situation you described at church. I think one of the concerns about people potentially hesitating to act is liability. We live in a very litigious society. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know is here in New York State, there's been a law passed, and it's called the Good Samaritan Law, that protects individuals who act in times of emergency. And a lot of people don't know that or understand that there is some legal protection for them when they do act. I think they are a little bit afraid of hurting somebody. And I think because they don't do it every day, they may also lack the confidence in the training that they took. One of the things, again, that I think is going to improve that situation is getting the message out, providing the training in the high schools, and also the training has been simplified to the point where the real focus is actually getting them down and getting them to learn the psychomotor skills of actually performing the physical skill of chest compressions. And I think once they learn and understand how easy that is, I think we're going to see more and more people react and start doing CPR when it's needed.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the program. It's easy to learn and it's easy to apply, and we could just open it up to so many more people, and that's what we want to do. We want to make people aware of the fact that they can learn and we can provide the opportunity. In fact, we're having a CPR training program. I believe it's going to be at the crossings.
Yep. One of the things that, with Paula's help and commitment to public safety, we've taken the video that the American Heart Association has put together to help train people in CPR. It's a short clip, and I believe we're going to see it here in a moment. It's right on the town's website. They can click on it to learn CPR. The other thing that we've committed to as far as the town and the department is to get out there and try and train people in CPR. There were so many events during EMS Week, which just recently passed. We worked together with the staff at Parks and Recreations, and we've got a date, June 1st, at the crossings in the main building, and it's free of charge. People can stop by. There's information on the town's website. They can call the EMS office at 782-2645 and get information about the event. And basically what we're encouraging people to do is stop in, take a few minutes of time, and come in and learn CPR. And we're going to be doing that all day and throughout the evening on June 1st.
Okay.
You know, we did the same thing down at the Assembly, the Heart Association, but they went into the well of our legislative building and for a number of hours offered the training to people, which was great, because I think it's very clear, as we have so many more people, whether it's a heart association or your organization or even the Assembly or the town hosting these events, you create that awareness, and it almost, as you were talking, answers my question in part, because people will become more comfortable with this as more of us know about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think we've got a great opportunity to let our viewers take a look at the CPR instructional video, and so we'll do that right now.
Hi, my name is Michael Daly, and I'm the Medical Director for the Colonie Department of Emergency Medical Services, Colonie EMS. We're here today to talk to you about CPR, cardiac arrest, and how to get someone who has suffered a cardiac arrest, hopefully get them back. In Colonie, we have a pretty unique program that's working extremely well. We'd like to share that with you. Joining me today is Assistant Chief Jack Bevilacqua from the Colonie EMS department. Jack's going to spend some time talking to you about statistics.
Hi, Michael. Cardiac arrest is so important for people to know what to do when a cardiac arrest happens. It's a little known fact that a lot of people don't do CPR or don't want to learn to do CPR because they're afraid of touching somebody or getting a disease. People don't realize that 95% of the people who go into cardiac arrest outside the hospital do so at home. That means that the people that are around who can make a difference are their loved ones, and they're not learning that, which is a stat that we're trying to change here in the town of Colonie. We initiated a program about 2 years ago about citizen CPR. At that point, I believe our statistics were we had about 80 cardiac arrests. 22 of those we got back in the hospital, got back pulses and their breathing. Only 4 of those came out of the hospital. We only had 1 person who had citizen CPR. Today, the stats are up about 25% of our cardiac arrests have citizen CPR initiated before we get there. Our return of spontaneous circulation has increased tremendously. That is the big difference that we see here in Colonie, is not that we're not doing any super job, it's the citizens that are making a difference. Starting compressions. American Heart said this in 2000, and in 2005 they said CPR is the most important thing that makes a difference in survivability.
There's something called the chain of survival. The chain of survival means each link in that chain has an important role to play in the survival of somebody in a cardiac arrest. A cardiac arrest is when somebody's heart stops. When their heart stops, blood no longer is traveling to their brain, and the brain begins to die. The first step in that chain of survival is citizen CPR. In the town, we've done an excellent job of getting police officers, firefighters, and other town employees trained in first response, which means that they arrive to start CPR, to perform defibrillation, which is where they shock the heart. But the first step of that chain of survival is what we're trying to actively increase now.
And that is important that they start CPR. But recognizing is also part of identifying that there is a problem and calling 911. And some people, what they happen is they feel like, I'm not having a heart attack or nothing's happening, or they're just sleeping and they're afraid to call 911. Calling 911 will get the resources there. Time is money when we're talking about cardiac arrest, and that's the difference. 1 minute or 2 minutes means a difference from surviving and not surviving. When you call 911, things that happen, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. We have what's called Enhanced 911 in the town of Colonie. That means that the information of where they're calling from and their phone number and their address is on there, but they always verify that. Computers nowadays, you never know, garbage in, garbage out, they may not have the correct address because of a computer glitch. So they're going to verify a bunch of information, where they are, what their phone number is, in case they do get disconnected, then they can call them back and get more pertinent information. But they're going to ask them, what's the problem? Police, fire, EMS. What's the patient's age? Are they breathing? All those questions are going to be asked, why the person's on the phone, but they have another communicator who's going to be starting to dispatch the call. So if you do call 911, don't be afraid that, oh, just send the ambulance, because why are you asking these questions? The ambulance and the first responders and the police department are already en route as that's going on. There's things that you can do also while you're waiting for us, or why the ambulance is en route, is making sure that you have your medication list out, having the lights on if it's at night, having your house number so it can be seen from the street. All these little things make a difference, and they only take a second or a couple seconds, make a big difference on the result or the end of the patient survivability.
That program of emergency medical dispatch with our professional dispatchers here in the town, what they actually will do is they will walk you through the steps of the emergency so that they can train the caller actually in performing skills. But it's a lot better if you've had that skill already. And what they're doing is providing a reminder in how to act in an emergency rather than training you for the first time in the setting of that emergency.
Yeah, and that happens a lot because people are afraid. It's like I learned CPR, 6 months ago or a year ago. What am I supposed to do? Well, I didn't take that class. I took the class through work or through something else. Most people don't realize that when they took the class originally, if they did it was for something else, and then all of a sudden they need to use those skills at home. What we've been trying to promote here in the town of Colonie is what's called CPR Anytime. What this is a little kit that comes, one's for adults, one's for infants, and they have a little inflatable mannequin and a DVD that you actually, it's a play and do type program where you put the DVD in and it brings you through learning how to do compressions, how to do ventilations, how to take care of somebody who's choking. And the nice thing about this kit, you can do it as a family. It's designed for your family to do this all together. But if in 6 months, a year, you don't remember how to do it or you have some family time together, you put the DVD in again and you can play it and refresh yourself right there.
I'm a physician, so for me, I do CPR, or in some cases I have other people do CPR while I'm doing other things, but I'm involved in cardiac arrest care on a relatively regular basis. My wife's not. She has no medical training. We took these kits home and practiced at home. It was really interesting for me to see how the kit would work for her as truly a layperson. Blowing up this dummy was a very unique experience, and this dummy actually is remarkably effective at teaching appropriate compressions. The infant dummy or mannequin is also remarkably effective. And actually in 45 minutes, that's 20 minutes for the adult and 22 minutes for the child, accounting, I suppose, for a couple of minutes to change DVDs, she was able to get trained.
And that's an investment for your family. Like we're talking about, all this stuff happens at home. So if you think about that as a family, each kit costs about $30. You can get them on the internet. You just go to American Heart Association and you look for CPR Anytime, and they have those kits in there, and they'll ship them right to you. That's $60 and less than an hour of your time for your family, not for the person you see in the car accident down the street or somebody that you're in the mall. This is an investment for your family, your loved ones, and this is where cardiac arrest is going to happen.
That's really true. That's really true. The other thing that's important is at this point, we've always thought of CPR as cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but if somebody does go down right in front of you, it's kind of gross. I don't want to put my lips on somebody else. And now at this point, it's exciting that the Heart Association is saying that you don't have to. And we're instructing our dispatchers that as well, that what they can teach and they can talk somebody through is hands-only CPR, which is where you are only doing the compressions once you've recognized that somebody is unresponsive.
And I think that is a huge change for people, that it overcomes their fear of having to do mouth-to-mouth that just doing compressions, that's something you can learn in about 3 seconds, is the difference. And American Heart's been saying this. This is what makes the difference, doing compressions. And compression-only CPR is so huge. And we're seeing it here in the town. That makes a difference.
No, that's certainly true. It's probably a good idea. Why don't we demonstrate some hands-only CPR for everybody? Take a minute and do that.
Excellent.
What Jack's going to start showing us is the process of a CPR situation where someone has gone down, is in cardiac arrest, and you need to begin to recognize what's going on and then act. Jack.
Okay. Identification that somebody's in a cardiac arrest is very important. So when you approach the patient, are you all right? Are you all right? I have no response. Call 911, get the AED.
Always make sure you're directing somebody specifically to call 911. Pick one person out of a crowd if there's a lot of people around. Because if you don't, what'll happen is nobody will do it.
I am only doing compression-only CPR. They're not breathing. I'll go just below the nipple line and compress. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10.
You'll notice that Jack is bending from the waist. He's doing compressions just below the nipple line with both of his hands stacked on top of each other. And he's compressing about 2 inches and then coming back completely up on the chest wall to allow the heart to refill with blood. And you can see this is actually quite a lot of work in order to do this efficiently. You certainly will get tired doing this relatively quickly. But the important thing to recognize is help is on the way. And the rescuers are on their way to you as long as someone has called 911.
You'll do CPR for approximately 2 minutes, and then you'll stop and check to make sure that they're not breathing. After 2 minutes, we try and rotate people. As you see, I just did CPR for about 1 minute, and it's very exhausting. What you try and do is rotate people through so you do good CPR all the time. What we try to ask people to do, the citizens, is give us your best 4 minutes. Because in the town of Colonie, we average about 4 minutes response time from the time that you call 911 till we get there. So we're asking you to do CPR for 4 minutes.
What we've found with our cardiac arrests that are getting bystander CPR in Colonie is a great proportion of these folks are going home. And this is not home to a nursing home. This is home to their loved ones. The first step of the chain of survival is recognition. The next step is citizen CPR. Learn CPR, get one of these kits, and train your loved ones. The person you train may end up doing CPR on you. It's extraordinarily important. This is a way we're going to save lives.
Okay, Mike, now we know, we've told them that the CPR is very important, and for us to get there within a timely manner is so important for the success of the whole call and for the patient to survive. There's a lot of changes that are coming down the pipe from American Heart. What in Colonie, Mass are we going to be doing maybe a little differently they haven't done in the past?
Colonie has always been on the cutting edge of EMS care in New York State. It's actually remarkable how we've seen such increases in our return of spontaneous circulation rates over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. And we can really track that back to the training and education that we're providing to the paramedics and EMTs in the street, and the training programs that we're running to make sure every year that we're reviewing how a cardiac arrest can most efficiently be run to follow all of the evidence that we have from the journals and save people as efficiently as possible. From the time that somebody initially gets care from Colonie EMS, what we're going to do is we're going to maximize compressions. We're going to use mechanical CPR here in the town, which is a machine that does those compressions for you. As you know, you got very tired doing those compressions there. Maybe you want to describe the thumper really quickly for them, if you would.
Well, a thumper is a pneumatic device. It looks very archaic. It's driven by oxygen, and it actually does compressions just like a plunger up and down. But it does perfect CPR every time, and it doesn't get tired. Right. It does very, very good CPR.
What we've learned is that doing appropriate, adequate, really good compressions can optimize outcomes. That's one of the tools that we use. One of the other tools that we then use is we make sure that we're not over-ventilating a person. We used to think a little bit of oxygen is good, a lot of oxygen must be better. And what we've subsequently learned is that actually over-breathing for somebody during a case of a cardiac arrest is bad. So we spend a lot of time training our providers to make sure that they're not over-ventilating in cardiac arrest. And we use some different breathing tubes sometimes to help make sure that we're ventilating appropriately. And we use other devices that we've learned along the line will work to do that too. Can you describe one of our transport ventilators, please?
The transport ventilator it's a tool that's used, that's small, that just actually ventilates the patient at a consistent rate and a consistent volume. Like you mentioned before, with little oxygen, good, a lot of oxygen, great. And we're finding through the studies through American Heart that that's not true, that this gives us a nice set tidal volume, which is how much air actually goes in, so that we don't overinflate the patient, which comes into a huge change for the outcome.
That's really important. One of the other things that we do is we have really advanced monitoring that we're using with our patients now. The advanced monitoring that we have is actually as good as that patients would get in many of the ICUs in the area, with monitoring of their saturation of the blood with oxygen, monitoring their cardiac activity, looking at the electrical activity of their heart, also looking at the carbon dioxide that they're blowing off as they breathe. Following that carbon dioxide that someone's blowing off, we can make sure that we're adjusting the ventilations to be sure that we're adequately ventilating and not over-ventilating the patient. Gives us a huge amount of information for that resuscitation. The other thing that we can do now, which is really remarkable, is that we can do a 12-lead EKG, just like you'd get in your doctor's office, and we can then transmit that directly to one of the cardiac centers that we have in the area. There are 3 hospitals in the area, as you know, that do cardiac catheterization: Albany Medical Center, Ellis, and St. Peter's. Each of those facilities is set up to receive an EKG that we would transmit in from the field. Remarkably, each of those facilities is also trained to do something else now, which we've been doing in the area since the first case that came out of Colonie back in January. And this is actually a remarkable process in its simplicity. It's called therapeutic hypothermia. And what we do in therapeutic hypothermia is we chill a person's body down to 92 degrees Fahrenheit. When we chill them down to 92 degrees Fahrenheit from the 98.6 that they normally are at, what happens is their brain goes on a, if you will, a brain vacation. This process has worked remarkably well at increasing the number of people that not only get their hearts beating again, but re-achieve their baseline neurologic status, or their brains go back to normal after a cardiac arrest. We saw that in our first case. We've seen that in many other cases since then. And this certainly is an important part of what we're doing here in the capital region. What we're going to start doing in the town, potentially as early as next week, is actually initiating that therapeutic hypothermia in the field, as opposed to waiting until a patient gets to the hospital. We anticipate that that will actually help our outcomes get even better.
These changes, I think back from when I started back in the early 80s of doing CPR, and how much resuscitation in cardiac arrest patients has changed. People have to realize that there are many things that we can do at the house to make a difference. And we know traditionally we used to go just to the closest hospital. We'd pick them up in what we would call the scoop and run, and just go to the closest hospital. We do a lot of more procedures on the scene now, and we may not go to the closest hospital. We may go to one of the cath labs to help change the outcome, to increase our survivability. And I think that's what people have to understand, that when we're on the scene, we may stay there a little longer than we used to. That's because we're doing things, and you mentioned we do things that they only do in the ICU, that we do out into the field to make a difference. And I think we've come a long way in the last 30 years for cardiac arrest management.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's really important to recognize when we make a decision to transport, the decision to transport really should be made based on what's the most medically prudent thing to do. Running for the hospital is not the best way for us to give someone a chance of being resuscitated and have them survive. Us doing the best job that we can do for that patient in cardiac arrest, right there, that's where we win a cardiac arrest, right there on the scene. And that's where we need to make sure that we save them. The other thing that's important is if we have done everything that can possibly be done, sometimes, unfortunately, people die and we can't get them back. And in many cases, it's not appropriate for us to transport that patient either. We'll spend more time talking about that in a different show.
So things have changed over the last couple of years. Out of everything that we've talked about today, I think the most important things that we want you, the information we want to convey to you, is that the chain of survival is very important. Identifying that somebody's in a cardiac arrest, calling 911, and starting compressions. Those are the three biggest things that you can do to help one of your loved ones, because when a cardiac arrest does happen, they're surrounded by their loved ones.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Mike.
I'd like to thank you for joining us here for this brief presentation, talking about the things that are available to you in the town of Colonie, and the things that you can do to help make a big difference for yourself, your loved ones, and your neighbors. I'd encourage you, go onto the Heart Association website, buy these kits, practice them with your family, and learn CPR. It can make a tremendous difference. The other thing is, get some friends together, have a party, buy some of these kits, have a CPR training party. They're not very popular yet, but I think it's going to be the greatest party you can have for 2010.
Well, I hope that video was helpful to everyone. It certainly is very informative. And maybe at this time, Peter, you could summarize and talk a little bit about the, the program, and just give us a little summary of, the whole CPR Anytime program.
Well, I hope the viewers that stayed with us really got an opportunity to see how easy it is to learn CPR by watching the video. The American Heart Association put forth the time and the effort to produce this video, and I think it's quick and it's easy. And I think you'll see by the video that the legislation that's being proposed, even though it's an unfunded mandate, which I know everybody is very aware of at the moment, it's very easy and very simple to learn, won't take an awful lot of time out of the student's curriculum. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, and I brought one with me, the American Heart Association has developed a program for family and friends. And it's very quick and it's very easy. It comes in this kit that includes a DVD, an inflatable mannequin so that you can practice the skills of CPR. You can share it with your family. You can share it with your friends. And it has everything that you need in here to teach your family and friends CPR. It roughly costs around $30. It's an excellent gift if you're looking for those people that it's hard to give gifts to. This is kind of like the gift of life. So I encourage people to learn CPR. Give a gift of life of one of these kits to one of your friends or family. Come out and join us on June 1st to learn CPR here in the town of Colonie. And again, if you ever have any questions or concerns and want to learn CPR, please reach out and contact us either through Town Hall or through the EMS department. Again, our number is 782-2645.
Thank you, Peter. And as we can all see, we have so many opportunities to be able to learn CPR and make the public aware of the importance of it. So, Assemblyman Reilly, I thank you very much for supporting this bill, and hopefully, it will pass at some point in time soon. I know the staff in the schools and our schools in the community, they understand the importance of CPR training. Peter, to you and your staff,
thank you.
Thank you for doing such a great job, and let's keep up the great work. And we're very fortunate, as Bob pointed out, to live in such a safe town that looks out for our public safety and our health. And we're proud of our accomplishments, but we just want to be sure that as a town, members of the town, that we can provide as much support as possible in this particular area. So I thank you both for being here today. It's a great opportunity for all of us, and I'm sure that our viewers learned a lot from this session. And again, as you pointed out, Peter, if they have any questions, please feel free to call us, because we certainly, we have the people that can help you and answer your questions and point you in the right direction. So thank you both for being here. And thank you for joining us today on Colonie Connect.